Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm farrukh pitafi. Once again we have to talk about Pakistan's politics, which seems to be focusing a lot on Kashmir's elections. Azad Jammu and Kashmir go to poll on 25th of July. That is not all. While it is going on internationally also, our environment is quite interesting. Remember what is going on in Afghanistan, elsewhere as well. So first of all, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, who was visiting and speaking in Kashmir, left the country and has gone to the US. Then the Prime Minister of Pakistan also had to go to Tashkent. You have seen his speeches today. But regardless of that, in Kashmir, the environment is still pretty hot. The exchange of diatribes and very aggressive language continues. Maryam Nawaz actually has been using very aggressive language, and similarly, when it comes to the government side and People's Party, there too we see a lot of exchange of hot words. We are going to talk about this election also, but then of course there are other aspects which are very important. For example, remember we did many programs on the efficacy of EVMs. There seems to be some consensus on the matter as well. In coming days, recently we heard Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, who's Federal Minister for Information, telling us that there seems to be some consensus between all the parties regarding the electoral reforms. That is also an important thing. But we have to understand how things are shaping up in politics, how much the rhetoric that we see in Kashmir is going to translate into politics of Pakistan as well. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, in the studio I'm joined by Ahmed Jawad Saab, who is Central Information Secretary of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the ruling party. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, political analyst and expert on administrative affairs as well, and he is also Kashmiri, joins us as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Waqas, for being part of the program. Barrister Asad Rahim Khan, a renowned columnist and TV personality, but not only that, he's also a barrister, a lawyer of renown. He joins us via Skype. Thank you very much, Barrister Saab, for joining us as well. Ahmed Jawad Saab, let me start with you and let me ask you, is there a possibility, because we are talking about Kashmir and there is a regional context to it, India has usurped half of Kashmir, right? In that situation, if our politicians could keep the political noise down and not actually go to these extents to score political points while conversing?
Farrukh, in principle, yes, because Kashmir is a very delicate issue, very sensitive issue, and whatever we do in Kashmir, that has a different reflection than any other part of the country. And especially when we have a lot to say about occupied Jammu and Kashmir, so obviously anything in our part of Kashmir might as well reflecting similarly in India. But on the other hand, this is the same political culture which prevails, whether it is the national elections or it is a by-election, it is a Gilgit-Baltistan elections, or it is a Azad Jammu Kashmir election. It is the same political parties, it is the same political culture which suddenly cannot be replaced with something new which we don't see in any other part of the country.
Right. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, one question that I came across yesterday while reading literature of this, and it was a question of, in hindsight, that giving all these political parties, mainstream political parties, a chance to participate in Kashmir's politics was a bad idea, because they have taken the same culture there. Kashmir's politics should have been internal and should have been shaped by the parties which were there historically, right? What is your reaction to this statement?
See, there are different perspectives. One important thing is there were two parties. Likely, MC Muslim Conference was an indigenous party, and then of course one of the party that came out of Pakistan People's Party was Jammu Kashmir People's Party. Lastly, two main political parties in AJK. Over the period of time, we have seen that their politics could not evolve. MC was in power when there was Pervez Musharraf government here, and after that we saw continuous decline in both parties.
Right.
The problem is also structural as well, because once we have the federal parties, of course they are better in resources, and of course once you have the structural arrangement that there is, of course AJK is largely dependent on the resources it receives from the federal
Right.
government as well.
Right.
So of course it has a larger bearing, but I personally agree, because there is AJK is a very unique case study and story as well, because of its larger context of the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir. I guess there is a need, and there was a need to strengthen and empower the local parties to have more,
Right.
the impact when it comes to Kashmir, because our point of view about AJK particularly is that it's basically a land which is where the people have got liberated from the oppressor.
Right.
And there is I personally think even the MC, if you see, they don't have bigger differences from the mainstream political parties. They believe towards the accession of Pakistan, and all they believe in that the aspirations of the people should be done through as per UNC resolutions. So idea, if just in a quick way, I mean, one thing I want to say, that this election seems to be unprecedented when it comes to campaigning.
Okay.
I mean, the rhetoric, the content, the ideas, if we see that, it's not very encouraging.
Right.
So I got
But,
taking
amazingly, usually traditionally in Pakistani politics, it was PTI which would take or channel aggression through words. This time it seems that it is reverse. The case is reverse. For example, we have heard Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and we have heard Mariam Nawaz. The kind of language they are using is astounding.
Because that's a problem, that this is actually a sort of the idea is that the politics of the mainstream here in Punjab, or the scene that has been taken and transferred the political narrative back to the AJK election.
Right.
Which is, I guess, parties need to understand one thing, that there is a totally different context. The needs and issues and challenges
Yeah,
are
and
different.
that seems to have been overwhelmed by national narratives, not the local ones.
So
You actually answered the question when you actually pointed out that the local parties have little resources, and the major parties from Islamabad, which have all the financial prowess, they overwhelm them. Let me bring in Barrister Asad Rahim Khan Sahab also. Barrister Sahab, once again, thank you very much, and you can comment on what was said earlier. But let me first, because you are a legal expert also, ask you, what does the law say about any lawmaker from Islamabad actually going to any elections, for example in Kashmir, and being part of canvassing there? What does the law say? The office bearer clause, does it apply to this? And if it does it only to the cabinet ministers and prime minister, or any office bearer, sir?
Thank you so much for having me, Farrukh Sahab. The law is quite clear that not only does it apply to serving government ministers, there have also been judgments on this question, including from Azad Jammu and Kashmir. It says that certain officials, whether they are elected representatives or empowered officials that are part of the state machinery, should not be able to expand resources or do other sorts of canvassing that is going to actually tilt the scale in the government's direction. And I think what we saw with Mr. Gandapur was very distressing, for the sole reason that one has to ask themselves the question that if this video did not come to the surface, how much of this culture has been normalized, which is also why I will agree with the two other senior gentlemen and participants, that we should not be extrapolating the rest of Pakistan's culture to Azad Kashmir. And that would be the other point that I would bring up, which is that if you just take a small survey of what Mr. Bhutto Zardari, Ms. Mariam Nawaz, and certain leaders from Tehreek-e-Insaf have mentioned, it doesn't seem as if anyone is addressing the core question. The core question is how to make Azad Kashmir is part of Pakistan's social contract in light of the fact that there are United Nations resolutions and in light of the fact that this is a territory which has very special connotations per the Constitution of Pakistan. So this is a very difficult test that our political forces have to come through, and these are difficult tensions that they have to negotiate. Instead of actually trying to make Azad Kashmir part of that social contract, we saw more of this partisan points. We saw more debate about occupied Kashmir, which is very, very important. But it was done in such a way that was more about international forces and the state of affairs on the ground, as opposed to how to actually improve the standard of living for people living within Azad Kashmir who have very express hopes and aspirations. So all in all, a rather disappointing display.
Right. I just wanted to point out that while media attention has been focused on Gandapur Sahab and other federal ministers or lawmakers, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and umpteen other people who accompanied Maryam Nawaz, they are office bearers as well, right? And somehow media doesn't actually seem to focus on them at all.
Please don't get me wrong. I feel that what Ms. Maryam
No, I'm not misinterpreting you. I just wanted a comment from you about these people as well.
No, Farrukh Sahab, you're not misinterpreting me at all. In fact, I get the impression that you interpret it exactly correctly. The state does have more of an onus, though. There is greater responsibility for Mr. Gandapur by dint of being a federal minister, by dint of having this as his specific portfolio. But I will be the first person to agree that if you just listen to what someone like Ms. Maryam Nawaz is saying pertaining to how her party will stand against the provincial status of Azad Kashmir, if and when that should come to pass, I feel that is extraordinarily irresponsible, both from the perspective of Pakistan's international law position, both from the perspective of the fact that there is a bipartisan consensus that occupied Kashmir and Azad Kashmir are subject to the fundamental right of self-determination and a plebiscite. This sort of
and that's a very good point. Allow me to actually bring back in the representative of PTI, Ahmed Jawad Saab, because he can comment on Gandapur Saab's involvement as well, and overall the quality of debate in the election campaign, where it seems that there are accusations that somehow you are going to make Kashmir another province of Pakistan. So you want to react to both these things?
First of all, in continuation to my last comments, that we have a specific political culture spread over 5 decades, perhaps even more than that. And we see the demonstration of that political culture by all political parties throughout the years. The reason it's a national election, it is a by-election, it is a local body election, it is a cantonment board elections, it is Gilgit-Baltistan election, it is AJK elections. So the same political culture is prevailing every time. I mean, there is hardly, I see, it could be change of few faces, it could be few more rhetorics, it could be few more statements, harsh statements, but everything is same. I mean, if you just go back to Gilgit-Baltistan, I think if you pick up one speech of government or the opposition leader and one speech of government and the opposition leaders in AJK and Gilgit-Baltistan, you perhaps may not find much of the difference.
Right.
The content is almost same. And
sorry to cut you, I understand that you can wear many hats. One is representing your party, the other is of the analyst, an objective analyst. At this moment, I will request you that you don't wear the analyst cap and you actually come back to the party's representation, where you have to actually explain to us what is Gandapur Sahab doing there, despite having the portfolio, and also regarding government's plans regarding Azad Jammu and Kashmir.
I think the question what Aleem Gandapur was doing, I think he was making speeches.
Yeah.
He was participating jalsa. So
Okay.
I mean that's the answer. What
All
he
right.
was doing, because you asked me this.
And the law prohibits. This is what
Yeah,
was
and
pointed out.
that is why already Election Commission has taken action on that, and now there is quite strict regulation on the participation of mainstream politicians from rest of the Pakistan to participate in the AJK.
All right.
So, I mean, there is nothing else except that these things are happening. I'm not justifying them, but yes, they are happening.
Okay. Regarding the status of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, do you plan to change it?
At the moment, there is nothing.
Okay. Because Mariam Nawaz actually keeps on suggesting that there might be something of the sort, even though they were the first ones to actually welcome Modi when he came to Pakistan.
You have to give the right to opposition leaders.
No.
They have to make some narrative
Okay.
during the elections. They have to sell something before the elections. So selling confusion, selling doubts about the performance of the government, about the policy of the government, I think that's what opposition has to do. So they have to do all such kind of statements. So
Right.
I
So
cannot,
you don't take them seriously.
I would not like to take it seriously. It's a very serious issue. Like I think also
No, I must compliment you on the
each
fact.
one of us, I think, I mean, acknowledge the fact that
Yeah.
it's a serious, I mean, discussion. It's a serious subject. Though we just see the glimpse of everything what we see in the rest of the Pakistan. But
Right.
yes, AJK has a very peculiar status, and there is a need to be very cautious about it,
Right.
about our statements. So that
Before
the
I-
cause of the Kashmir is not
Right.
damaged.
Before I go to Dr. Waqas, let me compliment you on something. Compared to many in your party, you are very tolerant of the opposition's criticism at times, right? And this is a compliment. Dr. Waqas, let me ask you about what the major issues on ground in Azad Jammu Kashmir elections. I understand that the status debate is neither here nor there, because opposition, he's right, keeps on actually weaponizing whatever they get. Question is, what are the key issues on ground?
Yeah, so importantly, I mean, that what we are witnessing right now, that this is a missing sort of link. I mean, if you see overall debate on large issue of Jammu and Kashmir, there has been debate in past as well.
Right.
But the intensity and the way it is portrayed, this is not something which is very encouraging and healthy, and not constructive and engaging in a way, I must say. So, and you know, there is an impact to it. Before I come to the genuine issues, the question is, the problem is, it also divides communities.
Okay.
It also divides not only parties but communities, people living over there as well. So it has, of course, larger, broader impacts on it.
Okay.
So I guess Kashmir, like many issues in Pakistan, are a few important areas are the issues where people have a larger consensus that the fundamental political rights of the people should be, you know, promoted, and they should get the fundamental political rights across the board in Pakistan.
Okay.
So I guess this spirit should have been, you know, replicated over there, which is not there, which is very sad. Particularly on issues, I guess the political parties, those should have, I guess, focused on, and their content should have been on the, particularly AJK has the issues like infrastructure development.
Okay.
Employment has been the key issue as well, like here, but of course lack of industry and other resources.
Right.
And then of course the availability of internet, 3G, 4G, this structure,
Right.
this issue has been
And
always.
medicine, is that okay? Because yesterday I had another guest from Kashmir, and he actually pointed out that in the areas that are adjacent to LOC, there's only one gynecologist, right? And that goes on for other amenities as well. And that is a frightening situation.
That is where I guess our political parties, the narrative should have been, I mean, the large part of AJK that is located on line of control, the people have been severely impacted by the firing on the other
Right.
side, from the other side. Now they have socio-economic issues, their psychological issues, their life have been quite different from the rest of the AJK as well. What about them? Actually, it's a huge constituency in the huge number. I mean, geographically, it's a big strip. Now the question is, it's not only about health, it's about the education. You have the generations who have lost educational opportunities because of this intense firing. This ceasefire is yesterday's phenomenon.
I'm told that the quantum of educated people in Azad Jammu and Kashmir is significantly higher than the rest of Pakistan.
Because see, there is a quantitative improvement, but there is also a requirement of the qualitative improvement, and that comes with, of course, empowered human resource, and if we need to work on that. But just one thing, I mean, because there could be so many reasons. Over there is not the culture of agricultural land, or people don't have any option but to, you know, get their children educated and send them for the jobs and abroad as well.
Right.
So we need to see that there's a whole lot of culture. Parties need to understand the economy. Parties need to understand the governance structure. Last program we have discussed during that you know, with this administrative structure, which is too big, large, the government as the sole employment provider, you cannot have the good governance, and you cannot invest on people. I mean, the budget, which is 70% more than this 70% budget, is non-development budget.
Right.
So I guess these are the issues which parties need to speak and give
But
people
parties
hope.
are not focusing on that.
And this indicates the weak, you know, political structure of the parties as well.
Yeah.
Where is the work?
That means that Maryam Nawaz, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, or for that matter, people from PTI, they will be talking more about Islamabad's politics rather than the common people who are sitting there and who are going to vote.
But just one thing.
But why do they throng these jalsas and public rallies if their issues are not being handled or addressed there?
See, AJK is a particular political culture.
Right.
So I told you even before in the previous program that the people will come no matter Bilawal comes, Maryam goes, Prime Minister. There's a political culture. People attend because they don't get much opportunity to seeing these leaders and all that. There is, of course, a genuine affinity of the people, and people have associations with the parties. But even with PTI as well, people have a lot of hopes, and still they have. But the idea is, the responsibility of the leadership is to articulate the aspirations of the people and highlight their genuine issues and come up with their solutions as well.
With your permission, let me go back to Barrister Saduraim Khan. Barrister Saab, since we are talking about Kashmir's politics, do you want to add on how it is now actually shaping up? And do you think that the common man on the street, who should be represented in the legislative assembly, their aspirations and their desires are actually being channeled into practical politics?
Certainly not. I think you hit the nail on the head, Farrukh Saab, that we are essentially transferring Islamabad's politics to Azad Jammu and Kashmir's very distinct issues. And I think it's very important that someone like Dr. Saab, who is from there, is able to tell us with great insight what those issues are. And he's certainly correct about people being affected by the firing across the LOC. Speaking for myself, the law students that I've had the privilege to teach here in Lahore have spoken about massive issues with regards to 4G, with regards to connectivity, with regards to internet during the pandemic. All were from AJ&K, some were from Gilgit-Baltistan. And that brings us to our original point. And I think it's rather transparent and honest of Jawad Saab also to touch on these points and respond to the criticism in the constructive way that he does and the measured way that he does. There has been no roadmap from our political parties with regards to employment opportunities, with regards to an industrial base, with regards to the internet connectivity issue, with regards to firing across the LOC. What we saw were impassioned appeals. We saw Ms. Maryam Nawaz, speak about her Kashmiri heritage. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Saab say कि आप सियासत बिल्लियों की ना करें, शेरों की करें, and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, videos coming to the fore. This is not very conducive for making Azad Jammu and Kashmir an entity in which its own people have a stake in the wider Pakistani project. Certainly.
Right. And do you think that in coming days, perhaps media is going to actually emphasize more on these issues? or you see that Islamabad or Pakistan's media also not doing its job well?
No, sir. I think maybe with with the exception of yourself and a few other persons, I see the media as very much part of the problem. I don't see the media actually saying that Azad Jammu and Kashmir have these specific problems on the ground. They either conflate it with the overarching international situation with regards to our disputed territories, or they adjoin it with Gilgit-Baltistan in a long list of our special territories and only concentrate on status. Status is an immensely important issue, but to conflate Azad Jammu and Kashmir with Gilgit-Baltistan is a disservice to both areas, both the people of both territories of which say that they are distinct entities. So I feel that our media has been reducing the issues of Azad Jammu and Kashmir through these two very reductive prisms. And it's very important that people like Dr. Saab, other gentlemen and ladies who are from there, put their problems forward in a way that is insightful, in a way that is constructive, and in a way that makes Pakistan's policymakers and its media register the problems on the ground and focus on fixing them, not with a view to the international situation or the status question. Those are questions that will require long-term structural issues and are ongoing. Please focus on the people over there.
Right, and that is very important. Ahmed Jawad Saab, your party must be promising something new. On one side, we know that the Prime Minister has actually proposed a very revolutionary idea of improving the tourism industry. But 3G, 4G is hardly there. Even today, I was talking to a reporter and he was traveling within Kashmir and I couldn't get through because of the connectivity issue, right? Infrastructure. If you have traveled, or you must have, from here even to Muzaffarabad, I mean, the kind of roads that you encounter are problematic. So what exactly is new that your party is promising? And why is it that while other parties have their PM candidates, nominees on the front, you haven't picked one?
We haven't picked what?
Prime Ministerial candidate for the state?
We did not pick up this candidate in Gilgit-Baltistan election beforehand.
That is a new status, a new place where two elections have taken place.
I mean,
here you have one former Prime Minister whose party head, your party's head in the state, Barrister Sultan Mahmood, and there are umpteen other people. Why not actually nominate somebody so that people know who's going to govern them?
If you allow me, because you will interrupt me again.
No, you asked a question, so I had to answer. Yeah. Okay.
So, what I was just referring to, that yes, in AJK it is the Prime Minister, in Gilgit-Baltistan it is the Chief Minister, or in Punjab it is Chief Minister. But at the same time, these are regional elections, or provincial elections. And there is a CM, or in case of AJK it is the Prime Minister. So if you look back in the previous election, so we did not nominate CM Punjab, we did not nominate CM KPK, we did not nominate CM Gilgit-Baltistan. So it comes later, so what's the big deal? I mean, why do we have to announce it beforehand?
In parliamentary democracy, usually you're supposed to nominate somebody. People know who's going to actually represent their state or their province.
I mean, what we have done in the past, I think, do you think that's not parliamentary?
No, but you gave us a better example at the center by nominating Imran Khan Sahab,
I think
who became PM.
Yeah,
and he actually was a crowd puller.
Yeah, Farrukh, that's about the main leadership in the country. For example, PTI, it is Imran Khan; PMLN, it is Nawaz Sharif; for People's Party, it is Asif Ali Zardari or Bilawal Bhutto. I mean, that's a different discussion. And I do not find much similarity with the Prime Minister of the country and the Prime Minister of AJK. I would rather compare the Prime Minister of AJK as the other regions and the provinces.
Okay, I'm intrigued that I asked you two questions. And you went for the political point scoring one. I asked you about the program of your party, what you are going to offer to the state, and very effectively You actually...
No, I didn't. I was trying my best
Okay.
to convince you on your first question.
Okay.
Now, yes, we can shift to this. The program of PTI. You see, so far today in this discussion, it is a very academic discussion which we are having. I love to be part of any academic discussion, which is on merit, which is on principles, which is on idealism. This is what we have been talking so far in this program, that how we should conduct ourselves in AJK, what is the background, what is the merit, what is the
Healthcare,
I'm coming to
internet,
that.
infrastructure, jobs.
What are the socio-economic issues of AJK? I mean, it's a discussion all on the merit. But I made a statement in the first part of our debate that you cannot expect that the national culture which prevails throughout the year or over the years or over the decades, that when there is a AJK election, so you suddenly convert your political culture into Switzerland. Okay. You are not entering into Switzerland one night or one day that you start expecting that there should be everything about principles, about rules, about sanity, about the background, about the caution we should have as far as Kashmir is concerned. It cannot happen. It is the same political culture. And now coming to the question, which I'm afraid you might remind me again, that is the program of PTI.
Okay.
Now I'm connecting the question with the same philosophy which I just explained.
Mm-hmm.
It is same that two-party system in Pakistan, then in Gilgit-Baltistan, and now in AJK,
okay,
where People's Party or PMLN, they have their turns, and they would come, whether they perform or not, they will go away with the next government change in the federal. So there was never a discussion, there was never a debate about any change in AJK. Mm-hmm. And I think now what Prime Minister Imran Khan had the vision about Pakistan, the same vision he would like to give it to Azad Jammu Kashmir, which is tourism, which is emphasizing on the socio-economic issues, which is industrialization, which is 3G and 4G, which is health. And just to remind you that already for the Azad Jammu Kashmir, Insaf health card has been approved for every person in AJK.
Right.
So that's already a big move for taking care of the health of the AJK.
That's a great idea, but you have to have doctors as well, right? And
of course,
that is one of the problems that was highlighted earlier.
If you just allow me, in Gilgit-Baltistan, just in few months, I mean the kind of budget and the kind of programs which has been rolled out, it is just in a few months after the election. So I'm quite sure that once we make a government in Azad Jammu Kashmir, you would see similar kind of development programs coming from AJK.
Dr. Saab, you must have noticed that PTI doesn't believe in upfront payment. I mean, they're not nominating any candidate. They're telling you, but trust us, and then we are going to deliver. But let me ask you, because it has become an issue elsewhere as well, in the past as well, power outages. How much power outage is there in Azad Jammu and Kashmir these days? What is the quantum? And then regarding other issues, for example, unemployment, poverty, figures, because the numbers that we have seen of late is that poverty has risen to somewhere around 60% because of COVID and lockdowns and all. And finally, COVID itself. Where does the state stand right now?
See, on the poverty, one thing we need to understand that since a large population chunk is doing jobs abroad, particularly in
diaspora, millions of them. Yeah.
And I guess due to that global thing, recession, many of them must have, and they did lose their jobs and came back home. Of course, that has one impact, and that's a very serious impact. since it doesn't have bigger industrial base, we need to see there are two perspectives to it. We built AJK particularly, I mean, if you see from 47 onward, from scratch. I guess there were no institutions at that time, and slowly and steadily it's also a good case study of good political, economic evolution and transformation. But of course, you cannot stop somewhere. Government being the biggest employer, giving more than 70% people employment. I mean, there's a limit to it, and it's not a smart governance. It appears government is expensive, and it's not possible for them.
Power outages,
and there are issues of power outages, but the issue is of course with some payment as well. But there is of course this critical issue, because people believe that I guess this is quite democratic in nature, that AJK also produce a lot of electricity as well, so they should be given on priority as well. But one thing I must say on political culture, when we say that these all things are very much ideal in nature, the question is we need to evolve. We cannot, be, hostage to the narratives that still this, since there's a culture here, so you cannot change. I mean, we also
especially from the party that promises change.
Because
you have to have some
with due respect, one thing, because we're also introducing new culture, which was not over there. So if we can introduce that sort of culture, but if we are introducing a culture which is not very much healthy, what we are discussing right now, we can also go the other side as well. So, but I guess this also indicates that overall structurally, parties need to work on their structures as well, because once you are talking about the AJK's premiership or the candidate from this party, not on their parties, across AJK, if you see, you do not find a leader of that caliber and stature that you nominate and it has appeal across the AJK, and that is very depressive for any political culture. So I guess that element should also be
none of the parties has that.
I don't think so. The parties of the period of time declined. The leader status, particularly after Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan and the Ghazi Millat Sardar Ibrahim Khan, you don't have much, bigger, wider stature of leader that
the
can have
incumbent, and then the Sultan and others.
Because over the period of time, the politics in AJK regressed, and it is reduced. The appeal of the leadership has also